Hello everyone, this is Jacob Popio, the producer of the Apex. In this episode, Jan and RJ sit down with Senior Master Sergeant Rick Hartzell. They discuss the journey that Hartzell took from feeling like he was completely stuck in life to joining the military, running his first marathon in his 30s, and ending in the grueling, legendary Burning River 100-miler. Hartzell offers advice on the race prep, food, mental toughness, drive, grit, and whether or not he thinks he will ever run a 100-mile race again. If you want to support us, there are 3 ways to do so. One is to donate to our cause at www.patreon.com/the Apex Podcast. Secondly, visit our merch line that is proudly partnered with Envision Clothing Company at envisionclothingcompany.com. The third is completely free. All we ask is if you learn something from this episode or know someone that needs to hear our message, share it with them. Please subscribe and hope this pushes you toward your apex.
Welcome, Apex Chasers, to another episode of the Apex Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jan Almasy, and seated across the table from me is my co-host and partner in crime, Mr. R.J. Holiday.
Oh,
anticlimactic.
How's it going, everybody? Actually, about that, I actually had someone message me not too long ago and be like, why does he always say your name so weird?
Really?
I was like, he's trying to get as many ways to say my name as possible. We haven't agreed on one yet.
Yeah, I'm about to just start, I'm going to introduce you in Slovak next time or something.
Perfect.
But we already did that, so I guess I technically can't use that.
Also, just for everybody listening, we are in our new home.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, for those of you that haven't been paying attention to our social media, first off, bad on you. Pay attention. Second of all, we are officially moved into our studio in partnership with Jumpstart and the Innovation District in downtown Canton. So we're going to be building this up, and soon Apex Chasers will be able to come say hi as we're recording.
We have a storefront now.
There is a big glass garage door that you can stare at us as we're recording.
As we work.
Yeah. First Fridays are going to be fun. For those of you that are from Canton, that's an event that the city puts on that we're going to be doing some pretty cool work with. So keep your eyes peeled.
You'll see us downtown a lot more.
So if you haven't subscribed already, subscribe.
Do it, meow.
And follow the Instagram. All right, guys. So I am amped today for this interview because we've interviewed one set of ultramarathon competitors. Bo and Michaela, if you recognize that, though they were 8 episodes ago, something like this point. It was earlier in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But running for extended periods of time baffles the crap out of me. Okay. I have no idea why these humans decide to put themselves through this kind of thing, but it's super intriguing.
I don't even run.
For me. Well, yeah, no, you
Even
can't. You can't even walk up the stairs.
Yeah, it's like if I'm late. Sorry, I'm liable to have a heart attack if I move anywhere over walking speed.
So before we introduce our guest, I'm going to read a little snippet describing the race that he actually competed in that we're going to kind of build up to actually talking about what that experience was like. So the race's name is called Burning River, which is actually super ironic because it actually traces back to the numerous times that the Cuyahoga River caught on fire because it was one of the most polluted waterways in America. Fun fact, Ohio is the reason that the EPA got started because that river was so disgusting. Yay, Ohio. Good job. So the surface was covered with so much gross stuff that actually caught on fire. And the race is now run along the burning river.
Do they light it on fire? In commemorate? No?
No, it's clean now.
I think it'd be cooler if they rained
the EPA was a thing. Now there's actually fish in there, I think.
Darn.
So in 1969, after the Cuyahoga River and everything, it led to the Water Pollution Control Act legislation, the Clean Water Protection Act, and the EPA. And now that race is run up and down the length of the Cuyahoga River, and we'll dive into more of what that route looks like when we talk about it. But the gentleman that we're interviewing today competed in the 100-mile ultra marathon.
I can't sit in a car for that long, to drive that.
Yeah, I have to at least stop.
Let alone run it.
Yeah, stop to get some snacks from Speedway or whatever.
My ass fell asleep 30 miles ago.
Right. So in the studio with us today, I call him Sarge, but is Mr. Senior Master Sergeant Hartzell.
How's it going? Pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So, but right before we dive into all of this stuff, I do have to, since we're interviewing a member of the DoD, have to give a waiver that says that any opinions, if we do happen to talk about military content on this episode, that they are solely the expressions and the opinions of the people that are present in the room. They are not the official opinions of the United States Air Force or the Ohio National Guard. Okay.
Nice.
Good to go. Sir, welcome to the room. Why don't you just start by telling people where you're from?
So I grew up in Akron, North Akron, grew up on the Hill, graduated in 96.
I was 1 year old.
That's disgusting.
I was 4.
And, you want me to go on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Roll for it.
So I graduated in 96 and I tried going to college a little bit and then that didn't work out. I got a factory job at Step 2, worked there for a few years.
And what was step 2?
Step 2 is a plastics company. We make mailboxes, trash cans, toys, all that kind of stuff.
Riveting.
Yep. It was awesome. Like 150 degrees in there.
Sweet.
So from then I, tried going back to school, worked at Swenson's for a little bit while you're going back to school.
Yeah, Swenson's.
And then right around 24, I started realizing, what am I doing here? School wasn't working out for me. I had a lot of family things going on. My dad wasn't working, and I was trying to help them stay on their feet. Still living at home at 24.
Right.
And talked to my girlfriend at the time and was like, all right, I think I need to move on. Not from her, just move on with life in general.
Right.
So talked to her and, got her to buy it off on me, joining the military, and chose to join the Air Force. And
So now I kind of want to back it up a little bit and kind of focus on that era a little bit there, because I think that and we talked about this during your pre-interview call, that there's a lot of people that believe that era of time is completely life-defining rather than just being a bump in the road. There's two different ways that I've seen people come out of that kind of iffy era, and it's either you're like the 40-year-old dude that still talks about the touchdown he threw senior year of high school, or you figure something out and you end up on a positive note somewhere. Like when you were kind of going through that process of trying to figure out what that next step was, first, what triggered that realization that it's like, my life's not going anywhere? And then second, what was kind of the first thing that you did to kind of push yourself over the edge to maybe I need to look at something else? This isn't working.
Well, I had always worked full time, and I think that's one of the reasons I had such a hard time going to school, is because I was trying to work full time, go to school full time, and pay for it without coming out of pocket costs and stuff.
Right.
And I had some of my family that was in the military. I think my uncle was in the Army, my other uncle was in the Air Force. My dad actually was in the Army for 3 years. So like we had that military background, and then like the realization, so Step 2, Swenson's, one of the requirements is that you do go to school.
Oh, really?
Yes. Because I was the curb runners, and I was one of the curb runners.
Okay.
So the curb runners, you're required to go to school and work. That's one of the stipulations of working there. And I had been a semester or two not going to school, and they'll usually let you take 1 or 2 off, and then they're kind of, all right, what are we doing here? Right. And I think those kind of realizations, like, what am I doing here? Is what made me realize, I need to do something.
Right.
And this isn't it. I'm not going to be a curb guy at Swenson's for the rest of my life. Right. Obviously. So.
Right. Yeah, because they're going to fire me if I don't come back to school, if I don't figure something out. Swenson's is going to be like...
You drag out 10 years of school because you just love being...
You just love working at
I'm here for the potato teasers.
Yeah.
I'm here for the burgers.
Yeah. So what was your first AFSC? And for those of you that don't know what an AFSC is, that's basically just your job. What was your first job?
So I have one and only finance.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. So you've always been super boring. What was your first base?
So after the basic training tech school, I went to Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay.
So
now did your relationship end up working out at that point? It kind of follow you through?
So after we had that conversation, I think a week or two before I went to basic training, I proposed to her, went to basic training tech school. She came to my basic training graduation, came home from tech school, got married, and took her down to South Carolina with me.
Nice.
So I was home for like a week and packed stuff up and out. And she had always lived at home too, so it was like it was a huge impact on her, like life-changing experience for her also.
Right.
So
did you like South Carolina?
I loved South Carolina. That's actually
a
the
little
reason.
bit of vindictiveness left over there.
It's weird because that's actually the reason I got out. Because active duty is a lot different than the Guard. Right. You don't get to pick where you want to be. And I was coming up to the end of my enlistment, and that's when they had a processing center that they were building for all of active duty finance, which was in Ellsworth, South Dakota.
Nice.
Ooh.
I don't.
He's like South Carolina,
South Dakota.
So I don't like Ohio snow. I can't imagine I would like South Dakota snow.
So if you ever had the chance, would you go back to South Carolina?
My wife and I have talked about it. The possibility of going back there. There's a lot of government jobs down there and stuff, and I have 4 years till I retire, and I don't know. Family is a lot and means a lot to me. So that's probably the hardest part, and that's the reason that we came back here. Was
that you deal with the
family.
Ohio snow.
Yep.
Family
that too.
Yeah. So when you guys were down there, if you had to go back and you were looking at, we deal with a lot of, that I run the student flight program, right? So I would deal with a lot of those younger kids, and I say kid, but they're really 6 years younger than me, coming into the Air Force for the first time and kind of trying to figure out what's going on prior to going down to boot or whatever else. I know it's probably an active duty perspective, but if there's something that you could have told yourself when you first kind of got in that would have made your life easier, is there anything that just kind of jumps out as far as a piece of advice you would give yourself however many years ago?
I was actually I've always been successful in the military because the advice I would give anybody is you go in and you bust your ass, because busting your ass, it pays dividends.
Right.
Huge dividends.
Well, I mean, it just puts you on people's radars.
Right.
I feel like.
Right.
He can talk about that in relations to bodybuilding or anything else. Most of the time, it's just people with a stupid work ethic that really just outperform, because once you get that in your head and you're able to kind of conquer things, that even in nursing, I see it where if it's just no matter what people throw at you, you're able to kind of take it in stride and say, hey, I'm going to.
People notice those types of things.
Yeah, I'm going to bust it out regardless. I'm not going to complain about it. I'm just going to kind of keep my head down and gut it out. People start to catch on.
And I would say I had a slight advantage too, being 24, I had life experience. The other airmen that were coming in at that time are 18, 19 years old.
Right.
They don't have that life experience that I do. Plus, I'm living off base with my wife. I don't have to deal with all the nuances with the dorms and all that BS going on.
Right. Those 5 years of just lively experience too are so grand in scope compared to other.
I think there's
other parts of your life
too.
Huge
Huge difference between 19 and 24. Or 18 and 24. Massive difference. And I also think that at 24, you had something to lose. You know what I mean? So that kind of can be an internal motivator too. At 18, you're just kind of like, meh, I'm getting a paycheck. Sweet.
Not too late to restart if need be.
Right. Yeah, but 24 and with a wife and everything else, I think that motivates you a little bit more. So you finished up in South Carolina and you came back. Did you get into the Guard right away, or was there a gap? How did that work?
So when I was, considering getting out because of the whole South Dakota thing, not for me.
At least it wasn't Alaska. That's where all my buddies went.
I went to Alaska.
Alaska and it was at the end of your enlistment. Right. You know what I mean? It wasn't like halfway through. They're like, bye.
Yeah. So when I decided that, I looked into cross training first. But when I started looking into cross training, I was super picky. was trying to get in the medical field. I picked 2 where they had like 1 or 2 slots for all of the active duty. I didn't get selected, which was fine. Couple months before my separation, I started calling around or looking around for guard jobs because I had a senior master sergeant that sat next to me that she was in the reserves working with us full time. And she was like, you should look into the guard or the reserves because, you know, you don't want to waste this 4 years that you put in. You can still build on your retirement and so on and so forth. And she said, with the guard, you got your GI Bill and you can get school paid for free. So you can basically double dip and get paid to go to school. So that was what my plan was.
Yeah. Between that and people not knowing that there's actually full-time guard members, I think that the guard is like the best deal.
That's another thing is like when I got there, I had no idea. Like I just talked to the recruiters. All right, yeah, now I'm in this office, and I get there and I'm like, what are all these people doing here during the week?
Right.
So when I got there, I'm like, well, maybe I can do this full time.
And then ended up, you kind of took a piece of your own medicine, busted your ass, and then got a AGR position. For those that don't know, AGR is just the full time side of the guard.
So I got there in, I think May 19th was my enlistment for the guard. And they went TDY in June. So I wasn't able to see, I think I drilled in June, then they went TDY. And then in July, I drilled.
Difficulties. So we're just going to allow Sergeant Hartzell to kind of jump right back in. So you were talking about how you came out on AT days and then you kind of earned your AGR position that way.
Yeah. So they put me on AT days, and like on active duty, you know, I came out, proved myself, and again, I got more experience than most people there because now I have my active duty experience, and now I'm 28, 29. Right. So it's like, again, a lot of younger people and all that experience, and just busted my butt and ended up with a full-time job within a year.
Which is, I mean, that's quick.
Yes.
That is very quick to get an AGR position.
Yeah, actually, I ended up with like other kinds of orders, and my break between active duty and my guard active duty is 2 months.
Oh, wow.
That's quick turnaround.
Yes.
Yeah, no joke. Huh. So your retirement is just like pretty much right on point with
it'd be
when
like
you started
20
your
years
duty.
and 2 months. And then I can retire.
Wow. That like never happens. And that's coming from somebody that works personnel that sees those kind of files like all the time. And that's unheard of.
Not in the guard.
Yeah,
for sure.
Not in the guard. That's really cool. So you got the full-time job out there, and now you and your wife are moved back to Ohio. You've got the full-time job out at Mansfield. What got you into running? We'll kind of transition into this side of the conversation.
So is that when you got into running, or had you started in? So I'm sure it's probably pretty nice to run around South Carolina.
Yeah, better than South Dakota.
Yeah.
Actually, not as much as you think because it's super humid down there.
Yeah.
But it does overlap a little bit. As far as super long running, not till later in life, but like even when I was at South Carolina, my commander motivated us with a 4-day pass if we got 100% on the PT test. I got 100% on my first PT test down there, and the only one in the squadron to get 100% on the PT test.
Now, what does that entail?
That's the 1.5 run, your push-ups, sit-ups.
Gotcha.
And waist measurement. But I ran my 1.5 in a 9:36.
I'm good. I think my fastest, even when boot, I think my fastest was like a 10-12.
So my fastest was this year at a 9:27.
Nice. I've never gotten 100 on a PT test. I've always gotten 98s, 99s because of that run. I can't get it down that extra 30 seconds. I'm sure I could if I tried.
Do they have benchmarks for them? Like,
yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's like 18 to 30 or something like that is one category. So I may get 100 when I'm over 30. But as of,
my time.
as of right now, it's not happening.
Yeah, the run time doesn't doesn't give you much more after.
No. Well,
that's
then,
not what helps you.
I'll just live my entire life subpar.
98 percentile.
Right. I'm almost there. Not quite good enough.
So also while I was there was a staff sergeant that talked me into doing a triathlon. It was like a little mini triathlon that they did on the base. It had it was a 5K, and I forget what the distance was on the bike, and a crap ton of laps on the pool in the pool.
Right.
So aside from those, it was just, your normal training runs for the 1.5 miles or your
PT
test
stuff.
every year.
So what was your first experience with like a long distance run? Because I actually thought when we talked, I was assuming that you were like a cross country runner in high school and it had been always kind of a distance thing, but you kind of decided you're going to do a marathon later on.
Yeah, I didn't do any sports in high school. So I didn't really start running until I was in my 30s, really.
Not too late for me.
Yeah.
It's never too late. But so as far as long distance, what are you considering long distance? Just the marathon? What's your long distance?
My
car.
Yeah. My long distance, like the furthest I've ever run consecutively is a half.
Okay.
So that's like my kind of consideration is like 13.
Okay.
10 to 13 is kind of that distance training, I think, in my head. For him, it may be a 100-meter sprint.
Yeah, no. I walk on inclines at a 3 mile per hour or whatever it is. That's the extent of my cardio.
I guess in 2008, 2009 is about when I started considering doing a marathon. And me and my cousins started doing like trail runs, and how they have the Dirty Trail series and stuff like that. We started doing those, but a lot of those are like 10 miles or less. So I know that's long distance to some, but that's like my short runs these days.
Right.
But and then in 2012, like in those years leading up to 2012, I would say I was going to train for a marathon, and I would start getting into a program to try and train for a marathon, but I never committed to it. In 2012, I talked to my cousin and I was like, hey, you want to do a marathon? I want to do one. And, it's a bucket list thing for me to do. Let's do one together. So to commit to it, we bought the marathon. We purchased.
And they're not, most of them aren't cheap.
Yeah, it's over $100.
It's
over $100. So we, purchased our entry into the Akron Marathon, downloaded a plan, and did a lot of runs together, a lot of runs not together, because that's just how it is with running. Your schedules don't really mash up, and completed our first one in Akron for 2012 Akron Marathon.
So it was the 2012 Akron Marathon. What was that first experience with that long distance run like?
Oh, holy cow. A lot different than it is these days.
Oh, I bet.
So I had a very, very generic plan. And the goal in any marathon is to make it to the finish. And almost every runner that you talk to is going to talk about the wall, and the wall is real. I hit that wall around 18 or 19, and I felt like I had cinder blocks on my feet and could barely run for the rest of it, but I think I finished that one at 4 hours and 12 minutes. My goal time was under 4 hours, but any race, you have a goal time, but that goal changes drastically even during the race.
Right.
So
like how do you know when you're about to hit that wall? Like, is it predictable for you now, or does it just kind of happen random?
So now, yes, I've completed 17 marathons. So I can foresee a lot
right
now. Those first few that I did, I couldn't predict it. And when you hit it hard. And it stops you almost.
Right.
And it's hard. And what really hurts you is when you stop, because as soon as you stop, your muscles are like,
they crimp down.
Yeah. Nope. No more.
Yeah. I really think I always take, and he knows this, I always take things and kind of apply it to life in general. And I think that, and you can kind of add into this because I think that you'll have some good points to add, but, that wall, right, the marathon wall, and you kind of finished it perfectly for the way I was thinking about it in my head, is if you stop moving when you get hit by that Mack truck, it's going to be 10 times worse. So like you're in life, you apply for a job, don't get it, or you get injured or something else crazy happens and life throws you a curveball. You got two options, right? You're allowed to complain for 24 hours, maybe. after that, if you stop, you're going to be stuck for months.
Makes it harder to go back.
Yeah.
You get in your own head about stuff. You're like, am I really doing what I want to do? Am I going the direction that I want to go? Stuff like that. And then they say the same thing about school. It's like, oh, you go to school for a little bit. You're like, oh, I'll just take a semester off. Semester turns into 4 years. And you're like, screw school. I'm never going back.
Right. So, I mean, have you ever encountered things in life that running marathons, since you've hit that wall and overcome that wall, you can you're able to kind of get through stuff?
Oh, for sure. Everyday life, there's a lot of things that, you feel like you can't accomplish, but I strive under stress. Like when I have more and people are giving me more stuff, I almost do better than if I'm just stagnant with just a couple things to do.
Yeah.
So,
I can relate to that 100%. Like right now, sitting here right now, I'm running off of like 2 hours of sleep because yesterday we had to come up with an internship packet and we did a bunch of work until 3 something. So a lot of it's self-inflicted. Had a bunch of stuff I need to knock off my agenda today, but it's like, you know what? We got an interview tonight. I'm going to go in. It's going to be good. And you move on.
Yep. And oftentimes you get those second wins too that just push you through.
Right. That happens all the time at the hospital too. You get to that like 10th hour of a 12-hour shift and then they say, hey, could you stay for a 16? And you're like, but then the second win hits and you're like, okay, I could get through this and then go home. Okay, so first couple of marathons, wall hits really hard. Starts to get predictable. When did you start? What did you decide that you're like, 20, what is a marathon, 26?
26.2.
26.2 miles isn't enough. I'm gonna try to push beyond that because that was interesting with Bo and Michaela. They were like, I'm getting bored with almost 30 miles. Let's go to 50.
Double it.
Yeah.
So I was always really intrigued with Forget the PR. I think I tried registering it for 1 year, but that's one that fills up like within days.
And this is the really hilly Forget the PR because it feels like death race.
In the Mohican,
right?
Basically up and down hills. And
these people are sadistic, man.
Yeah, the races aren't even inviting. They're just like
the
welcome
name is like,
to the
this
twist
is
your
going to
ankle
suck.
run.
Yeah.
So it had always intrigued me, and I tried signing up for 1 year, couldn't get in, and then 2014, I was able to get into it and race the Forget the PR. That was my first pass 26.2. It was the hardest thing at that moment,
right?
That I had ever accomplished. I went home, slept for like 24 hours because it was a 50K, so 32 to 31, and no endurance race is ever actually what they say. It's probably more like 32 to 35.
Right.
And then I was just toast by the end of it.
Oh, I bet.
And I got second wins in that too, where I was like passing people going to the finish line. So, and then from that point, I changed my goals to focus just on marathons. And a lot of that was because of injury risks with trail runs and stuff. I just didn't see that as a fit in my life at that time.
Right.
And I changed my goal to try and hit a marathon in every state. And then I just started trying to pile marathon after marathon, like running within a month of each other and stuff like that. So,
have you ever heard of James Ironman Lawrence? You know who that is?
No.
He like completed 50 Ironmans in 50 states in 50 days.
That's stupid.
Absolutely bonkers. He is a psychopath. But that's kind of the thing. You just kind of started stacking them together.
So, and I think that's stupid now. But when I was training for my first marathon, my cousin and I had just finished a trail race, like a 10-mile trail race or something like that, in the Coggan Valley National Park. And a guy came up to us and he's like, "Oh, what are you guys training for or whatever?" We're like, "Oh, we're going to do our first marathon in Akron." He's like, "Oh, you're going to do the Burning River 100 this weekend?" We're like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, there's a 100-mile race up in Cleveland this weekend. You guys want to do that?" And I was like, "You are freaking crazy. There's no way I'm going to do 100 miles ever."
Right.
I'm having a hard enough time training for this 26.2 miles.
Right.
So, just having that in my mind, and that's actually what led me into like that implant led me to want to run Burning River later in my life.
Because you just remember that day.
Yes, and I very vividly remember it. And I talked to my cousin later, and he very vividly remembers that same conversation.
That's interesting how like that just sticks out.
Yeah,
because it's terrifying.
Like that. Yeah, that's why.
and it wasn't.
He's having flashbacks.
See him stop and he just stares off into space.
Why?
And it wasn't even just that. Like so I went to Alaska one year for TDY, and I was training for a marathon at that time. And the comptroller there was talking to me. He's like, "Oh yeah, this other guy on the base, he does like these double marathons where he goes and runs a Saturday, Sunday." I'm like, "That's stupid. That doesn't make any sense. I've done 2 of those, and the one that I did was I was out of my mind." I ran a 3:42 on Saturday, which was a PR.
Right.
And I ran a 3:37 on Sunday.
Wow.
So I double PR'd in a weekend, which is...
That's stupid.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Unheard of, yeah. There's no way I'm ever getting close to a 3:30 anything. No. Maybe a half marathon.
I guess my question, and I think I asked Bo and Michaela about this. What is the difference in training when you decide to basically double the amount of mileage that you're doing in a single race?
It's like
do you run that to practice for that?
No. But it's like a full-time job. It's like a second full-time job. You don't practice to run 100 miles, but you do double long runs on weekends. So I think my biggest double long run was I did a 35 on Saturday, and then I ran a 25 on Sunday. So when you're going out and running 25 on Sunday, you're still exhausted
from the day
before. So you're teaching your body how to run exhausted.
Gotcha.
Okay, that makes
so it's
more
like
sense.
stagnated training under extreme conditions,
Right?
Yeah.
So instead of doing it all at once, you're kind of just like, well, I'm already beat to shit, and you're like, I'm going to feel like this in 100-mile run.
Exactly.
Right.
I see.
Right. So your cousin was actually pushing a little bit harder than you at one point, right? And that kind of sparked a little bit to get into that, maybe the 100-mile race.
No, my cousin is crazy.
Uh-huh.
He's done 700-mile races.
Holy shnikes.
So
No dolphin noises over that one. 7.
Wow. Yep.
Okay. That's more miles than my truck probably sees in a week.
What is the average time on those?
So the time limit is 30 hours.
Okay.
And
You're running for longer than a day. A full day.
I think the top finisher finished at 17 hours for the Burning River 100.
Trucking.
Yes, that's stupid times. I can't.
What kind of mile pace is that?
I don't even know off the top of my head,
Anybody
but
got
that's
a calculator, baby.
It's quick.
Yeah, that's boot scoot
for that.
That's probably
elongated.
like an 8.5 or 9 minute mile
for 100 miles. Holy, no, I'm good.
I need robot legs.
Yeah.
I'd do it if I had robot legs.
Okay, so I mean, we're gonna just keep rabbit holing into being dumbfounded by the distance.
Do you have to change out your pair of shoes like over that
Halfway
100,
through?
like halfway through? Just the sole of it gone.
I did 2 shoe changes during my race.
Oh, so that is a real thing.
Yeah.
I was that.
And
Why, though?
2 clothes changes too.
Well,
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you we'll just dive right into Burning River.
Okay.
When did you decide to run it? And then we'll just start because I really want to go through from when you started running the race. We've got 30 hours worth of story there. So we'll just.
You want me to build up to it?
When you started, and then we'll just start from when you started running. When did you decide to run the race?
Okay. So
I built up into.
I decided to run the race the summer of 2018. I had talked my brother into, hey, I want to run the Burning River 100, but you have to build yourself up to that kind of stuff. Like I said, I'd never run more than a marathon at the time. So we were trying to build up for a 50-miler. So we were going out every Saturday running together. And then I did a double marathon, and I was supposed to run a 50-miler 2 weeks later. We were both supposed to run a 50-miler 2 weeks later. And after that double marathon, we went out for a 30-mile run, and I ended up with a stress fracture 5-6 miles into the run, and then had to walk back with stress fractures through the woods, which sucked really bad.
Yeah.
So that put me down for about 3 or 4 months. And then from that point, I was like, well, I already did a double marathon that almost is like a 50-miler if you think about it.
Right.
So my goal is to do the Burning River 100. I'm not going to try and fit a 50-miler between now and the Burning River 100. I'm just going to start training.
Just go for it.
100% for the Burning River 100. But that's the way I am too. I never ran a half marathon before I ran a marathon. I'm the kind of person that will just go all
Full
in.
send. Yeah.
Like somebody asked me one time, don't you run half marathons or something? And I told them, I don't do half anything.
I like that. That's going to be a quote that we pull from this. All right. So you started training. How long did the training go leading up to the 100-miler?
I started training end of February, beginning of March.
And then the race was?
At the end of July, the last weekend of July.
You only trained for 4 months.
Yes.
Leading up.
But I had a base.
Right,
I've run 17 marathons. I know what to expect for long distance, so I have a base.
Yeah, I guess 4 months in my head is like,
Not enough time.
Yeah. No, I need 4 years.
Right.
Okay, so prepping for race day. We'll start there. You start getting into your head, like, what did that feel like knowing I'm about to do this? Like, I bought it. I have a number. This is happening.
Yeah. When you go pick up your packet, that's like the realization.
That's when it punched you in the face.
You see people walking in there, picking up all their stuff, and you get your number. And
people look happy? Is like everybody like somber?
Everybody is super happy in the beginning.
Yeah, right.
Right. They're like, this is going to be awesome. You see it 50 miles later, like, ooh.
Yeah.
So picking up the number,
so picking up the number in like your routine the night before the race. There's a lot of adrenaline going on, even the day before. The race starts at 4:00 in the morning, so you have to get to bed early because you're about to be up for 20 something hours. Just pinning your number on and getting all your gear ready, your clothes, your shoes, having everything set out. Like that's when everything starts setting into. This is really about to happen.
Right. Did you run with music?
I used to.
But I mean, for the 100-miler. So we were talking about.
I had no music the entire time. Huh. But that's how I am now. I used to run with music, podcasts like that, stuff like that all the time. But I got to a point where I don't need it. I don't need that to motivate me anymore. It's just me, nature, and just
going. Yeah,
I enjoy hearing the sounds of what's going on around me and just enjoying what's going on around me.
All right, so I think I want to split the race up into 25-mile segments. All right, so the first 25.
So you have to... Okay, I can break that up.
Well, you can split it up however. Okay. You know what? You're the one that ran it. Split it up however you want to split it up.
So, I mean, I can do that, but like running the race, you say that, but that's how you have to run a race like that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Segment it.
Very, very small segments. You can't think, okay, so if I drove from my house to the base, that's probably around 50 miles. I can't think about what that distance is like and then running back.
Running to Mansfield.
There's no way I can put that in my head and think that I could accomplish that.
Right.
Zero way. So you have to look at how these races are set up. It's a whole bunch of trails that they've basically junctured together, right? So the way I break it up is, all right, this trail's 3-4 miles. All right, I can get through that. And then I'm going to hit this next trail that's 3 or 4 miles. And, you just break it up trail by trail until you get to, points.
Right.
Because that's the only way to mentally get through these races. So I think it's funny that you said, break it up into segments, because that's basically what you have to do in your head. And during my training, that's what I did. Because I'm so close to this race, I was able to hit every single segment in my training. So I knew every turn of every trail that I was about to hit.
Oh, so that was going to be one of my other questions too. Like, if you live close to a race, is it beneficial to go and like run it beforehand?
Absolutely.
If you know what? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And I had hit every single segment, and I knew every part that I was going to hate.
Right. So,
Oh God!
now
I
when
feel
you're
like that'd make it worse because you've done it, and you're like, oh shit! Here comes the worst part of this whole 100 miles. Right. Be like, well, here I'm just gonna take a little detour. We're gonna skip that whole part.
right. So, I mean, there's a lot of people involved when people are running these types of races. You have, I mean, you said you did multiple shoe changes, multiple clothes changes, and stuff like that. When did the excitement, like from starting the race, start to wear off? Like, was that adrenaline kind of always there, or did you get hit by multiple Mack trucks along the way?
Yeah, you definitely get hit by multiple walls along that kind of race. So, super exciting at the beginning of every single race. Like, you have a crowd of people going out, and that's one of the things you have to get out of your head right away for any race, not just a 100-miler, but for a marathon, half marathon. You have to run your race. There are a whole lot of people and a whole lot of paces going on, but you have to keep your focus and stay at your pace. But so the first, I'd say 5 or 6 miles is super exciting because you're fresh. You know, it is what it is. But you know, you've been training for long distances, and anything past 35 for me was uncharted because I had not run further than 35 miles in my life.
Jesus. Well, that's an additional 65. So solid. Yeah, right. It's a solid increase. So did you hit a wall around 35 then, or what was that mental thing like when you're like, okay, we are now crossing the threshold of no return?
Yeah, my point was, I don't know if you know the Cog Valley National Forest very well or anything like that, but there comes a point where we came out of a trail and up into the bike trail, the bike and hike up in Stowe, Stowe Hudson area.
Yeah.
That portion of the race was 10 miles to get to the halfway point. That's super flat and super boring compared to everything that you just did, you know, on all these trails and everything. And that was almost a breaking point for me because it's just like running on. Yeah. Very, very mind numbing. But, you know, you're just focusing on getting to that halfway point. And like I was telling you earlier, you're breaking up into segments. A 10-mile segment is huge when you're comparing that to the 3 and 4 mile segments that you were breaking it up with before. Mm-hmm. And when it's the same thing over and over, there's no turns or anything like that. You just kind of almost lose your focus and get on autopilot and just try and push through it.
Right. I was going to say, so what did you do to overcome the feeling of wanting to quit if you started to get into that mind numbing?
I didn't get to that point just yet at that point. Mm-hmm. I ran the first 50 right around 12 hours. So first 50 wasn't rough for me. First 50 I got through pretty well.
Right. Did you have to do any clothing changes or any shoe changes that first 50, or was that mostly after?
I think that was around mile.
And how does that work? I'm curious. And how those, are you like running, trying to put a shoe on?
Yeah, so you have a crew following you.
Right.
My wife, my mom, and then other people came out and helped.
I know Vanessa came out for a little bit.
Yeah, she came out for a little bit. So they're following you. I had already planned where I wanted to do these shoe changes because, like I said, I already knew the trails. One of the trails you run on is a bridle trail. And it was like this water up to your ankles and mud. So once I got through that bridle trail, the next time I saw my crew, I knew I was at least changing my shoes, but probably changing my shoes and my clothes.
Huh.
So
see, I didn't even think about stuff like that being on the trail. Like you're running a 100-mile race and then you're running through knee-deep water.
Yep.
Bonkers.
Ew. Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to...
I think people picture these races as like flat.
I think when most people think of races, they're like, oh, it's a track.
Right.
At least that's how but when you say it's a trail, yeah, I mean, there's everything out there. You're stepping on sticks and stones and mud and
hoping
loose
they don't
gravel.
break your bones.
Do you think there's when you're running trails and practicing for it, does it strengthen certain parts of your legs or your feet just to be able to take that kind of punishment on that type of terrain?
I think so, for sure. I mean, I often, when I'm, nearing the end of my training, I often look down and I'm like, where in the hell did those friggin' calves come from?
Nice. So you got done with the bridle trail, and then how does the shoe exchange actually go down?
So, I had already planned it out with my crew and stuff. I'm like, they have a chair there for you and everything. I sit down and they pull my shoes off, pull my socks off, and just do a quick change. They'll put like a towel over you so you can do a quick change of your clothes and stuff like that. So,
and then you're just right back on the road again.
They give you your food and stuff like that, and they help you back up.
That's the other thing. Bo, I remember when we were talking to Bo and Michaela that you eat.
Absolutely.
While
You
you're
have to
running.
eat.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that actually killed me. With it being my first 100, I didn't 100% know what to expect. I tried to eat, but you often get discouraged to eat because it's so hard on you and your stomach. I wish I had eaten more at the beginning of the race. I think I would have done better had I done that, because I think I started going through some calorie deficiencies later on in the race.
Right. Okay, so shoe exchange happens. We're getting past the halfway point.
I do have one question. When you said that they were following you, what is that actually like? There's certain parts of the race where they like wait for you, or okay?
Yeah,
because I was like, if they're following, I was like, then they're doing the 100 miles too.
No.
Dang it.
So I gave them a map, and then it's at specific parks and stuff that they're allowed to go to. So I give
gotcha.
them a map. They just drive to those parks and they sit there and wait
for
See,
you.
that's
to
the
come by.
only way I'd do a 100-mile race is if
Gotcha.
I was driving from park to park.
Park. Yeah, there you go.
So we get past the halfway point. Yep. And
How are you feeling then?
yeah.
So my two good friends came to help my wife at that point, and he's my one friend's really funny. His name's Nick, and anytime he talks about my race with me or other people, he's like, dude, all I remember is looking down at your calves and they're just like going crazy, twitching.
Right.
So I mean, your body is so exhausted, but you just grab like any other station, you have to grab your food and
what are you
press
normally
on.
consuming? Like, what are you eating at those stations?
Anything you can get your hands on.
Calorically dense.
Anything. Popsicles, bananas, watermelon, pretzels, like any Pop-Tarts, anything.
Calories.
Just as many calories as you can possibly eat. But with this year, they changed the course for the Burning River 100, so it was an out and back. So that was one of the hardest parts when you got to the halfway point, because you can see the crowd where the halfway point was, because there's a lot of people meeting at the halfway point.
Yeah.
But you have to pass the crowd and then come back to the crowd. So it's like you see all the food, but you can't go get it until you go a couple more miles and then come back into it. And then once you get up, you realize I have to do all that again.
Oh. And so is that where the wall started hitting a little
That's
bit?
when it started affecting me for sure. Because one of the hardest parts of the race was Sand Run. I don't know if you've ever been at Sand Run.
Yeah. That's where I ran a half.
Yes.
Was around Sand Run.
On the jogging trail.
Yeah.
That's not what you run on in Sand Run for the
nice.
Burning River 100. There's two trails that go on the outside of Sand Run that are huge climbs. And when I got to the halfway point, that's almost all I could think about the whole time on the way back is I hurt so bad. I don't know how I'm going to get through that portion of the race.
And how many miles is that portion of the
That
race?
is in the beginning 15 miles. So that's a long time to think about.
Yeah. No kidding.
Let that build up in your head.
Yeah.
Huh.
So you said this was the first time it was down and back.
Yes.
So it was like all fresh 100 the years prior to that?
It used to go up from Squires Castle up in Cleveland, and it was a straight course, like straight down to Cauga Falls. So now it starts in Cauga Falls, goes up to Stowe, it kind of goes out and around and up to Stowe, and then turn around and go all the way back.
Okay.
Where you came.
Gotcha.
And that was because national parks don't want sanctioned runs in their parks right now.
Gotcha.
So
So what happened after all that mental buildup when you hit that?
I walked a lot.
Climb.
So the bike trail. So again, I had to go 10 miles down this bike trail, which was another mental break. I just did 10 miles of this crap. I got to do 10 miles again.
Right.
The good thing about on the way back, you're allowed to have pacers. So on the way out, you don't have pacers, but on the way back, you're allowed to have somebody run with you. And I had 4 people come out and help me make it through the race.
Oh, nice.
So I got through that portion. One of the breakdowns there was I thought I was going to be able to make it from the 50 to I think it was like 35 or the 65, 68 point, somewhere around there with daylight. I got to 65 and it wasn't daylight anymore. And we were going into a 3-mile trail. That I didn't have my headlamp. So that was a huge mental breakdown where I was like, I didn't plan this well.
Right.
And it was really, really hard for me to get through that 3 miles because all I had for a light was my phone and my pacer's phone because he didn't have a headlamp either.
So had you planned to pick the headlamp up like later?
I planned on picking it up at 68. So right after that 3-mile trail, I was planning on picking it up anyway.
Gotcha.
But I thought I was going to be there before daylight went away.
Right.
Because it came really fast. And you come to that, you start seeing it happen, and you're just like, oh my God, this is going to
suck.
Yeah. Because you're on single track trails, and without light on a single track trail, with light, it's hard. Without light, it's super hard.
Right.
Trees just pop up in front of you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. If you want for stress fracture or roll your ankle or anything, and you've already put in 65 miles of work, that'd be devastating. So you made it out and you got your headlamp.
Yep.
And was that kind of like a reinvigorating feeling almost, or was it just kind of like
that was
at
probably,
this point it just all sucks?
That was the first point when I wanted to quit.
Was getting to the 68 mark?
Yeah. And it was dark. And starts getting chilly when it's dark. You're already sweaty. And my cousin brought me, he's like, because my cousin was going to pace me from there. He's the one that ran the couple 100 miles. There were 700 miles already. So he's very experienced in all this. So he starts bringing me food and stuff. He's like, you need to start eating, blah, blah, blah. He gives me a cup of ramen. And as soon as the ramen hit my stomach, it came right back up.
Oh, God.
So that kind of stuff just started building
That'll
up in my
mess with
head.
And you're like, I can't even keep the food down. That's what I'm thinking.
Soup is just a bad idea.
Out of all things, ramen.
With it being cold and also not cold, but cold enough that it's making you feel cold. It warms you up, and there's a lot of salt. And salt's a huge thing that you want to consume in those kind of races because you
don't want to have a massive seizure. You lose too much salt.
Exactly.
So you make it, and the cousin is pacing you at this point. Did that kind of put a little bit of like a competition thing inside of your head at all?
Yeah. So like I said, he's done so many of these that he's got a lot of good experience with it, and he basically got in front of me, and it was almost like he was pulling me without pulling me. He's setting that pace to make me stay with him.
Right.
We walked a lot of it, but it was a lot of faster walking, and
just to keep moving.
Yep. And he's putting the bugs in my ears. You need to run here. You need to do this. And then with him, I hit that bridle trail again where we're in water. And
that's insane to me. So you're hitting that bridle trail like 70 plus miles.
Yeah.
Oh,
jeez.
Yeah. And you got to think how many people have gone through there and broke all that crap up.
Oh, so it's just sludge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my foot actually got stuck to where my shoe was sliding around. And once we got out of there and onto the road, he's like, all right, we're on, because it was like a portion of the road. He's like, we're on the road. We need to run while we're on the road while we have, a flat. And he's like, we need to run. And I try to run. I'm like, dude, I can't run right now. I have a blister on the ball of my foot. And it was from when I was sitting in that sludge, like trying to pull my foot out and just the friction rubbing on the bottom of my foot.
Right. And at that point, your skin was already probably so
and
fragile.
like I couldn't run at all. I could barely even walk because of the blister. And then we got to an aid station where, we didn't have my crew or whatever. And I'm like, I have to quit. I can't do this. He's like, sit down and just think about this for a minute. Don't talk to anybody. Don't tell them that you're pulling out of the race yet. Just sit down and think about it. So I sat there for probably 5 or 10 minutes, and he's like feeding me, giving me drink and stuff like that. And I knew that I was about to hit this hill that sucked. And that's another reason I was like, I don't know if I can do this.
Right.
But, I got my bearings, we got up and kept going. And then once we got back to my crew, I looked at my wife. I was like, okay, we're doing a shoe change like we did last time I passed this bridle trail. So I need you to do a shoe change. I need you to get some clippers or something and bust that blister up and tape me up. And the community in these things it's crazy how supportive they are.
Right.
And at these aid stations, you have a lot of people out there helping these runners get through it. And a lot of those people, they are ultra marathoners themselves. So they know
what's going on,
or
what you're going through.
Yeah. So one of the guys there was like, I'm good at feet. I'm going to take care of you. He comes over, rips my shoe off. He lets my wife pop the blister, and he's like, we're not going to put Band-Aids on this. Give me some duct tape and duct tape my foot.
Tape it up.
Yeah. Duct tape my foot, put my shoe back on. And they lifted me up, and my next pacer, actually Sergeant Bache.
Oh, that's awesome that he got the pace.
Yeah. My next pacer got in there with me. My cousin, as all that was going on, my cousin's sitting there talking to him. You need to do this. You need to do this. You need to push him here. You need to push him there. And once I got out there,
knife handing you.
not me. It was Bache. He was telling Bache everything that he had to do. And then once we got out there, Bache pushed me in the right places, and I started running again. The blister didn't hurt anymore because it was popped.
Good.
And then you hit the hill.
Then, yes. And then I started thinking about those damn hills and sand run again. So between there, where Bache picked me up and sand run is where my brother picked me up. And he ran the last 13-ish miles.
This is the last half marathon.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And a lot of that was that sand run area where it's just up and down. So what most people would think is the uphills would suck at that point, but your quads are so destroyed at that point that the downhills are actually worse than the uphills.
You're just stabilizing yourself, like
Yes.
trying to keep yourself from tumbling.
Yeah.
Right.
So, we got to points where, so going back, because I got texts when you hit certain points, it tells you what your time is and all that stuff. So going back after the race, I was looking at these texts. There was a point when I was projected to get in just over 30 hours, like 30 hours and 6 minutes.
And 30 hours is a cutoff, right?
30 hours is the cutoff. And my brother looked at me. He's like, we have to pick it up. You have to push yourself as hard as you can. And we were in that sand run area and just power walking through these hills, like faster than I've ever walked before. And talking to my brother afterwards, he's like, dude, I looked back at you and I just couldn't even believe what I was seeing at that point. So we got through that, and then we got to the towpath down in Memorial. And I looked at him, I was like, dude, we got to run like 16-minute miles. And I was averaging like an 18 or just over a 17-minute mile or something like that. He's like, yep. And I think my first mile out of there was a 14-minute mile.
Nice.
Screaming.
Yeah. So all in all, like I said, I was projected to get a 30:06 or something like that at one point. And then the last 10 miles, because they show you your legs and stuff, I finished 160th out of 163 people that finished. The last 10 miles, I had the 54th best time out of 163 people that finished.
Wow.
Top third.
Yeah. So you really just kind of went balls to the wall there at
but
the end.
It took a lot of dig deep, you know.
Do you remember what you
deep
told yourself? Like, was there a phrase or was there anything that happened when you kind of clicked over into that overdrive? Or was it just kind of like, F it?
So there's a phrase I often look at. I actually have it on my wall at work. I have a board that says 50 marathons, 50 states, and I, you know, color in the states as I'm doing them. You know, I got 17 states filled. And then to the right of the states that I'm filling in, is this phrase that says, the longest distance in any race is the 6 inches between your ears.
Wow. I think that's really cool. That's phenomenal.
Your mind will make it way worse than what it really is.
Yeah. I think that's true with anything.
Yep.
Anything in life.
For sure.
Your brain can make that you're either looking at the silver lining or you're like, my life sucks and everything sucks. And, you know, I'm not going to recover from this. I'm not going to be able to do good, you know, blah, 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 blah. But it's all right up top.
Yep.
Huh.
Especially in a situation like that. It's hard to fight a natural self-preservation after that amount of running and whatnot. Yeah,
Right.
Your brain, everything in your being and in your brain is yelling at you to drop down on your ass.
For sure.
No more running.
Yeah, your knees are probably screaming. Everything's screaming. Did you cry at the finish line?
I didn't. So I hear a lot of people say that there's a lot of crying and stuff like that, or hallucinations a lot. Well, I didn't get to experience any of it.
dragon?
He just keeps running. He's just like, someone's chasing me.
Forrest Gumping.
Yeah.
He just makes it to Cali.
Yeah.
I didn't get to experience any of it. And I'm like, what the heck are you guys talking about?
Oh my gosh.
The old runner's high.
Oh, I mean, you get runner's highs for sure,
Right.
but the hallucinations and stuff that people talk about with 100-mile races, I never saw
Experience
any of
any
it.
of it.
Never
So
saw any
you
of it.
get to the end of the race. What was that like? What was that feeling like knowing that you had just completed that 100-mile race under the 30-hour time
Yeah,
limit?
so like the last 7 miles, the first 5 of that last 7, I was running quite a bit to, you know, chasing that time. And then once I realized I was going to make my time, I was like, yeah, I'm walking.
Fair enough.
I think that ended up being like the last 2 miles. But
What was the final time? I don't know if you said it.
I didn't. It was 29 hours and 47 minutes. So I actually cut off 23 minutes from that.
Yeah.
You know,
Initial prediction that they sent
Yeah.
you a while back.
30 hours and 6 minutes.
yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I'd probably start walking too.
If you know you're going to make it at that point, screw it.
Yeah.
That's insane.
But another thing that drove me is, you know, I had a lot of people out there supporting me, and I can't give up for all those people giving their time up for me.
Right.
So driving, you know, for myself and for them, it was
It's
just,
like you have a community rooting for you.
yeah.
I think that's huge. And that's one thing I love about Jumpstart here and, you know, the space that we're in this innovation hub and the innovation district, and Linda out there is, you know, staying late for us to be able to record, but it's that community of people that is pushing for other people to be successful. It makes me want to work harder. I know it does the same thing for RJ. We all three push ourselves consistently, where it's just, you see the other person doing it and you know that they're out grinding for you, and it makes you want to reciprocate.
Accountability.
Yeah.
Another crazy thing is, like, when I was running with Bache, we were running on a pretty flat area in the woods that I felt a root wrap the top of my foot, and I fell from that. And at the end of the race, they pulled my shoe off, and I looked down, and my friggin' ankle was like ballooned up from that. So it was like, I think that was probably around between 80 and 85 miles. So I ran with
Another
jacked up
15
ankle
miles.
for 15-ish miles.
Nice. I mean, I'm not gonna be able to process any of that regardless. So we'll just let the listeners process that.
I stove my toe on the cocktail table. I'm like, time to go back to bed. I'm starting the day over.
Right. So to kind of to wrap that story up, and I think this is just kind of where we'll end, because I think this is just, you finished the race. You know what I mean? That 29 hours, 47 minutes. If you could, well, first, are you going to do another one? Is that on your radar?
I keep on going back and forth, but probably not. I think what my goal right now is going to be to try and hit my 50 states for my marathon. But I will still do training plans, or like what a training plan takes for a 50 miler or 100 miler, and just end it with a double marathon.
Right.
Kind of
just
thing.
Back to back, state to state, maybe.
Yep.
So Jacob's just curious. He wants to know what that recovery looked like after the race.
So I was at the hospital the next day getting my ankle checked out.
So I ran straight EMS.
And I got admitted.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But that was just to make sure just to make sure nothing was broken or anything.
Okay.
I actually went to work on Tuesday. So the race ended Sunday morning. I went to work on Tuesday, and the air condition was out in the building. And about halfway through the day, I felt friggin' nauseous and like I was still recovering from the race,
right?
Where I was still feeling nauseous and just like crap. And I was like, I'm out.
Right.
The day I got home, or when I got home, I went straight to bed. I didn't even take a shower, but I was chafed
everywhere.
Yeah. Worse than I had ever been chafed before. There's no way I would have been able to get in the shower without
dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Screams heard down the block.
So I laid on the couch, went to sleep. I would wake up, eat something, and then go back to sleep.
Yeah. Were you like hungry for like a week straight, just eating and
I was
crap ton of food?
Pretty much anything I possibly could.
You're like a whole pack of Pop-Tarts. You're like, it's not enough.
Yeah. The amount that would just deplete you.
Yeah. I mean, you eat a lot, even in the training. You have to eat a lot to.
Oh, I'm sure.
Keep up with your energy and your training. So
right. So we'll kind of end this up with, if you had to give somebody that's interested, and we asked Bo and Michaela the same thing, if somebody was interested in starting to get into distance running, or they're a marathoner looking to step their game up to the next level, what are some pieces of advice you would give? One to a brand new runner, and one to a seasoned runner looking to step their game to the next level.
So for a brand new runner, like I said earlier, you run your own race. Like I said, you get to a race start line and there are hundreds or thousands of people lined up, and the adrenaline is just so high and people will go out so fast.
Well, you want to compete with everybody. You don't want to be the last person out the blocks. You know what I mean? No, that's just human nature.
It is.
Competitiveness. Yeah.
It is. But unless you're an elite runner, you're not going to be competing.
Which is hard. I know hard for me to admit, well, I'm definitely for sure not at the level that this other individual is. It's kind of hard to take that back seat and be like, this is the pace that I'm going to run at. But once you get that in your head, you're kind of like, this is, in the long run, this is my best option.
Yep. And really you have to think about it as not that you're competing with everybody else. You're competing with yourself.
In your own times.
Yep. Really is what it is.
And then for a seasoned runner. So
for a seasoned runner, I would say slow down. That helped me tremendously with my running. So in 2018, I got 3 PRs, one in the spring and then those 2 in the fall that I was talking about with the back-to-back.
Yep.
And I was 40 years old. But the way I did that is I slowed down and started doing heart rate training rather than treating every training run as all out. You cannot go all out for every training run because some training runs are recovery runs. And if you're running hard on those recovery runs, you're not giving your body the time to recover like it should. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. And that's probably what I didn't realize for my first 10 marathons. I would go out and just balls to the wall every single time. And then wonder why I was so tired all the time.
Right. You have to give your body a chance to recoup.
Yep.
Wow. Well, I'm definitely more dumbfounded with this interview than I was with the original ultra marathons, just because of the amount of time, the distance. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah,
appreciate
it. Pleasure having you. It's crazy to hear these things, right? Because I mean, in like we said before, in my everyday life, his everyday life, you're throwing around words and numbers and distances that I only see on speedometers.
Right.
Not
odometers.
Not mileage you're putting on your own body, which is insane. And I mean, I've seen people bench press cars and squat hundreds of thousands of pounds and stuff like that. But to hear someone run that type of distance and that kind of grueling beating that you have, and all of that is done in the middle of the forest, not even on, comfortable.
You're running through Narnia to get to your race.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's crazy to hear that, and that type of determination and just mental fortitude to keep yourself accountable, and having other people keep you accountable to be able to accomplish that kind of stuff is absolutely insane to me. So more power to you, my man.
And like I said, it was insane to me when that guy said that to me, 7 years ago. I was like, you're crazy.
Do you wait now at the other smaller races? Like, hey guys, it's my duty to tell you about this cool thing called 100 miles.
Seed planted. You know what? And then he just stares at him and is like, it's all about the 6 inches between your ears. He's like Yoda now.
Yeah.
The force is
training
with him.
The younger ones.
So if you're listening to the Apex podcast and you want to support us, there's a couple of ways you could do so. We talk about it in the pre-reel. One of the ways you could do so is you go to www.patreon.com/the Apex podcast. For $5 a month, you get access to some special features on Patreon. You get an Apex sticker and a handwritten letter sent to you from us. 2 people that we want to shout out on this episode. Sammy, thank you for donating. And then Justin, also, thank you for donating. We appreciate you. Your stickers are in the mail. And then you can follow us on Instagram at the Apex Podcast. I'm at Jan_Almasy. RJ is at DocHoliday92 with 2 L's.
2 L's. Yeah.
2
Very
L's.
important. I don't know who the other guy is.
Is there anything that you need to shout out? Or are you good? You're
good.
Good. All right, guys.
Cool.
Well, thank you for tuning in. Do what? Merch.
Oh, yeah,
We're right. Yeah,
merch.
we have merch now. Thank you. So Jacob Popia I can't believe I forgot about that. We will post the link in the description.
Clothes?
Do you like comfy clothing? Do you like chasing your Apex? If you want to add 200% to your next squat set, these hoodies are guaranteed to add 200% to your next squat. Okay? So you can purchase them at... no liability included here. So if you thought that was serious, you need to listen to a couple more episodes to understand our sarcasm here. You can purchase those. There'll be a link in the description. Go ahead and click on it.
Mm-hmm. It's linked in all our social medias and stuff too.
Rep it and be proud of it.
We got a lot of cool stuff in there, especially for coming winter months. If you like crew necks and hoodies and warm clothes,
The whole kit and
it's
caboodle.
out there. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, guys. We'll talk to you next time.